all protocol observed. I'm extremely glad to be here today at the Blaster Square to receive a petition on behalf of the President from the International Trade Union Congress African event on issues relating to debt. I'm glad for some simple reasons. First, it's important for me to underscore the fact that Africa debt, as at December 2024, according to the United Nations, happens to be $1.3 trillion US. And the large share of this debt comprises debt owed to private creditors, bilateral creditors, and multilateral banks. Again, as at end 2024, 23 African countries were experiencing high debt distress. 23. 3 of the 23 have either defaulted or sought a formal debt restructure. And Ghana happens to be one of them. Let me say that in the case of Ghana, we saw an unsustainable debt situation in the year 2022. And as a result, at the time, our debt was in excess of 100% of our GDP. We had to go through a very painful debt restructuring. But something has struck my mind here after sitting here for some time. And I can't stop but to make a comment, not just to repeat and not just to receive the petition. First, the song here was Yentia. It means we will not pay. But let me say that there are differences between Yentia and Yentia. There are differences between we can't pay and we won't pay. If you can't pay, it means something significant has happened. For example, let me break this down. If you say, I will not pay, it means you have the resources, but you deliberately don't want to pay. That is debt repudiation. But when you say that I will not be able to pay, it means something significant may have happened. And as a result, I cannot pay my debt. In the case of these 23 African countries, what has happened is that their debt service cost has crowded out very important spending. And so if you perform a critical debt sustainability analysis, they simply cannot pay. It doesn't mean they will not pay. And let me repeat that one important thing I have noticed is that when your debt becomes unsustainable, it means the interest of the creditor and the interest of the citizens may have collided. To the extent that if you service your debt, you are not in a position to provide social good to your citizens, such as healthcare, such as education, such as defense spending, and many others. When that happens, then you are in a critical position. You either choose to restructure your debt or you forgo social spending. And you won't have a country if you forgo social spending. And when that happens, you go through debt restructure. And this takes me to your petition. Mr. Secretary General, you provided a letter to be delivered to the President. And in that letter, you have given a number of core demands. Demand 1, demand 2, demand 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 demands. But 3 of your demands have struck me. 3 of your demands. The one that strikes me most has to do with comparable treatment for all creditors. And that happens to your demand, that happens to be your demand number 6. You said provide comparable treatment in debt restructuring. I can't agree with you more. I support this statement strongly coming from you. I support this coming from you in the sense that we are all, for example, we are all creditors. And if we are all creditors and we are restructuring the debt, because in the course of debt restructuring, the country obviously will get to realize that the country cannot service its debt. And so there's the need for everyone to give something back to the country. Then it's important that every debtor be given equal treatment. Recently, in the case of Ghana, Ghana's case became very, very difficult, to the extent that even the pensioner and pension funds received cruel haircuts. Pension fund and pensioner were given haircuts. Some lost their investment. Countries also gave some debt relief. But unfortunately, multilateral banks such as World Bank and IMF did not give any form of debt forgiveness to our country.
They are wicked.
And the question is,
of course,
if the ordinary pensioner had to go through debt restructuring and forgo their pension to save the country, why shouldn't the World Bank also support?
yes.
And so I perfectly agree with you that if we are talking of comparable treatment clause, there should be no exception.
Yes.
There should be no exemption.
Yes.
Multilateral development banks must also join the debt restructuring efforts and give something back to African countries that are going through this
God
crisis.
bless you. God bless you.
I want to join you. I believe the comparable treatment clause must not only be limited to domestic and commercial debt holders as well as bilateral debt holders. It must also extend to multilateral development banks. Africa Development Bank, World Bank, IMF, all of them, all the multilateral banks must also join the effort. All the multilateral banks must also join the effort. And so, my appeal is for you to recognize that the Republic of Ghana will join you in this advocacy to get all to observe the comparable treatment as we have to go through debt restructuring. Let me again say that another thing that also strikes me happens to your point number 5 relating to transparency and accountability. Look, if you have to go to equity, you have to go to equity with clean hands, isn't it? It is important for us also in government to be transparent in accounting for our debt. And I can't agree with you more that there is the need for government to publish every loan agreement on a quarterly basis, and also to explain to the citizens how this debt is being used. For me, the use of debt is also important. If we use our debt well, we should be able to pay this debt. It's also because sometimes we don't properly use the debt that we accumulate. And so we can't forever be asking for debt forgiveness if within us, when we get this debt, we misuse it. And so it's also important that TUC, you put pressure also on government to be transparent in accounting for its debt and to use this debt well, so that going forward, we will all be able to know that this debt are being used. And then finally, on the issue of excluding certain critical security spending from the debt sustainability analysis. Again, I can't agree with you more. I believe that you should have a country before you have an economy. You should have a country before you have revenue to be able to service our debt. And so if the time has come for us to preserve our countries, then there's the need to do something or give a lower weight to our security spendings in the debt sustainability analysis. But let me conclude by making this point. I think the time has come for us to also pay attention to what constitutes the debt service as a percentage to revenue. The Secretary General made a statement that a number of African countries are spending 50% of its revenue in the servicing of our debt. This is largely also because we are borrowing too expensive. Why should African countries borrow so expensive as compared to its peers in other parts of the world? Why should it be? Why should the risk premium for African countries be so different from Europe, America, and other parts of the world? Why should that be? And because we are borrowing so expensive, we have so little debt, but the debt servicing cost is so expensive. And so maybe the time has come for us to look at what constitutes the cost, the spread that adds to the debt servicing cost for African countries. And so, Mr. Secretary General, this has come at the right time, and it's happening nowhere else than the Blaster Square. This is where Dr. Kwame Nkrumah stood and announced independence for Ghana and the other parts of Africa. We thank you so much for presenting such an important petition. His Excellency the President will work with you to ensure that justice is presented to the people of Africa. We salute you.